Hello, Paracave podcast listeners. My name is Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty and long-term sponsor of the Paracave podcast. If you're looking to sell your property or buy, or just curious to know what your property is worth in today's market, give me a call today on 0421 588 445.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave podcast. Troy Warner here, and it is game day preview podcast time. And the Parramatta Eels are taking on the Melbourne Storm at 8 p.m. on Friday the 26th of July at Commbank Stadium. Now the Eels sit in 16th spot on the ladder, and the Melbourne Storm, they are sitting high and mighty in position number 1, looking like they will win a minor premiership in 2024. But before we get started into this game on Friday night, let's go through some of the stats between these two teams from over the years. Now, Melbourne and Parramatta. Well, obviously, Melbourne came into the competition in 1998. So since then, the two clubs have played 45 times in finals and also regular season. And the Storm hold an advantage, 27 wins to the Eels 18. At Pertec Stadium, the former home ground, Parramatta Stadium as well, former home ground of the Parramatta Eels before it became Commbank Stadium. 15 games were played there, the Storm also having a bit of an advantage, 8 wins to the Eels 7. But at Commbank Stadium, there's been 4 games there. The Storm have won 1 game and the Eels 3. So the Eels hold a little bit of an advantage there. So at least going into this game, that is one little advantage that they have. A little bit of a home ground advantage. But look, that's probably not going to count for anything tomorrow night with the two ways that these two seasons have gone for both the Eels and the Storm. Look, the last game that was played at Commbank Stadium was round 1, 2023, and that was a Golden Point win to the Melbourne Storm, their one and only win at Commbank Stadium. They won that game 16 points to 12. Harry Grant, he scored the winning try. I think he ran from dummy half, and got around Jermaine Hopgood, who was playing his first game for the club in 2023, and scored the try next to the post, but it was Golden Point anyway, so no need for the conversion. Parramatta, and another interesting stat, and I know it's not a finals game, but Parramatta have never beaten the Storm in 7 finals games. So, and an interesting one, with the exception of the grand final in 2009 and 1999, where finals were played in a different system, different home and away sort of system, and that game was played at the Sydney Football Stadium, and of course the COVID year in 2020 where the competition was moved to Brisbane. All those finals games have been in Melbourne, and generally that would have been because of the Melbourne Storm finishing higher on the ladder in the regular season than the Eels. So Parramatta had to travel to Melbourne a few times to play finals games. But this isn't a finals game. It is far from it. Some of the famous games that these two clubs have played: 1999, that final that I was talking about at the Sydney Football Stadium back in the day, as it was called. Melbourne won 18 points to 16. Parramatta were winning in the first half. And now I do remember a couple of moments from that game. Stuart Kelly, former guest on the podcast, his try where he just ran for about, I think it was 30 metres or so, just the pace that he showed, and he got across the line. And also I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Parramatta Eels fans, the Stephen Kearney elbow on Jason Smith, I think they took him out for the game. So was it dirty tactics? Who knows? But I distinctly remember that game. I was at that game in 1999, and I also bought my tickets for the 99 grand final. I think it might have been before this game anyway, because I thought Parramatta were going to make the grand final. So went to this game, and 1999 was my first ever live grand final. Already had the tickets, so I thought, yeah, why not go? I was going for St George Illawarra that day as the Melbourne Storm knocked out the Eels. 2001, basically the Eels dominated that year, both in points. They held the point scoring record in that season. They beat the Melbourne Storm 42 points to 18 and 54 points to 10. 2003 to 2007, the Storm won 8 out of 9 games. 2009 was an interesting season. Round 19, the Eels won 18 points to 16. And obviously the 2009 grand final, the Melbourne Storm won 23 points to 16. We all know what happened in 2010 with the salary cap drama. The Melbourne Storm stripped of that premiership. But one great memory from that game was Fui Moimoi's try in the corner. I think it was from about 40 metres out. I think it started sort of in a bit about sort of midfield-ish, and then he just made a beeline for the corner. Absolutely great try, and it's often one of those tries that are seen in grand final week. 2010, June the 4th. Now, I remember this date and game pretty vividly, as that was my now wife's 30th birthday, and it was also the night that I proposed to her on that night as well. This day, back in the day, there was still 2 games, I think it was, on Channel 9 back in those days, and there was obviously the 2 games were being played at the same time. One game was on delay after the live game, and this game in 2010 was the delayed game. So I actually managed to catch the second half of this game. I hope she probably won't mind me saying that. But Billy Slater got sin bin for that in that game. Now, I think that may have been when Jared Hayne and Billy Slater came together, and there was a bit of a leaning with the head, or was it a headbutt? But I think that's why he got sin bin in that game. 2013, 64-4 at Amy Park, the Melbourne Storm win. 2017, another game that I was at, the qualifying final, 18-16, the Storm won. Now, there was a couple of dubious things in that game too. I'm not too sure what it is with Parramatta and Melbourne games and dubious things. Maybe it's just me, the Parramatta Eels fan, coming out, I guess. Probably the one-eyed Parramatta Eels fan, but I'm sure plenty of Eels fans would agree with me. I'm not just making this up. But look, there was a group of us. I distinctly remember it. We were sitting in the Eels away bay down at Amy Park. This try happened this pass happened right in front of us, and we all called it forward at the time, but the referee didn't listen to us. So they scored a try there. But there was also the great inside ball from Mitchell Moses to Will Smith, who scored in that game as well. There was also another controversial moment, I thought, when Cooper Cronk got the ball and sort of handed it to, and I think it could have been Kenny Bromwich, and Melbourne ended up winning, scoring a try and winning the game by 2 points. That was an unusual try, that one anyway. 2019 Magic Round, a game that Melbourne Storm fans would love and Parramatta Eels fans would hate. Melbourne won 64 points to 10. Now, the distinct thing that came out of that game was Ryan Pappenhausen. That was his 5th first grade game, and boy, did he make an impact in that game, and he really put his name up in lights in that game, and he's had a great career since. Unfortunately, has had some major injuries since then, unfortunately, but he's playing consistent first grade in the recent weeks this season. But yeah, his 5th ever first grade game, and he really made a name for himself. I think he had short hair back then as well. 2020, 6,282 fans at Commbank. Obviously, that was COVID year. Yeah, that's why the crowd figure was so low. Many suggesting that this Friday night game might be a bit of a low crowd figure as well, the way that Parramatta are going at the moment. And then there was another game in August. The Melbourne Storm won 36 points to 24. Now, I do believe that could have been Michael Jennings' last game in the NRL at the time. He has since come back for the Sydney Roosters and played a couple of games this season, reaching that 300 game mark as well a few weeks ago now, but that was his last game at that time due to that drugs issue that happened the week after Parramatta played South Sydney, and it broke on that morning. I think it was Hayes Dunster got called into the side. I think that was his debut game. But that game at Suncorp was Michael Jennings' last game in an Eels jersey. 2022, the last round of the regular competition. Now, this game was a big game because it was for a top 4 spot, and we all know that you need to finish in the top 4. History shows that you need to finish in the top 4 to win the NRL Premiership. And this game was won by Parramatta, 22 points to 14. They finished in 4th spot. They went on to play the Panthers week 1 of the finals. They lost that game. They then played Canberra at Commbank Stadium, and they won that game. And then they went up to Townsville for the prelim final against the Cowboys, and they won that game. And then unfortunately lost to the Panthers in the grand final. 2024, and this was the last time that they've played, was Magic Round this year, 2024, 48 points to 16. It was a Melbourne masterclass by Harry Grant. He scored 2 tries. Basically, everyone was on fire that day for the Melbourne Storm. And also, it was a game that Cameron Munster got injured in that game with his groin, and he hasn't played since. Now, there is a little bit of talk about whether he will play in this game tomorrow night. As of recording this podcast, he is still in jumper number 20, and he hasn't been named into the team or on the bench. So I'm not too sure if there might be a late change on game day, but at this point he is still a number 20. Now, players who have played at both clubs, and there's only a few, so go down memory lane and see if you can remember some of these players. David Kidwell, Alex Chan, who played for both Parramatta and Melbourne, and his son Joe is now playing for Melbourne. He's not playing in this game, unfortunately. I think suspended for this game, so unfortunately not playing in this game. Andrew McFadden, Willie Lation, who I've had on the podcast, Henry Perenara, the former NRL referee, Ben Roberts, Chase Blair, Ryan Morgan, who I've had on the podcast, Paul Fatawira, Luke Kelly, and the most recent one, and he is named in jumper number 19, has been playing a bit of New South Wales Cup for the North Sydney Bears as of late. Tepai Moroa, one of my favourite players for the Parramatta Eels when he was there. He is now at the Melbourne Storm, but as I said, has been playing for the North Sydney Bears in the New South Wales Cup at the moment. Now, look, to this current day game, the second time these two sides have met in 2024. And look, if we just look at the Magic Round game that I did mention just before, that was 48 points to 16. Look, all those stats that I just did mention as well, I found those on Rugby League Project. So check them out, Rugby League Project. They've got all of your rugby league information, players, clubs, records, and etc. So whenever I do a podcast, that's where I go to get my information about players and the like. So thank you very much, Rugby League Project. You're doing a great job by doing that one for rugby league fans. So that's where I got all the stats from. The 2023 game was down in Melbourne at where was it? Marvel Stadium. Sorry, I just had a mind blank for a second there. Marvel Stadium, and that was due to the Women's World Cup in soccer that was being played at the time. So they had to play at Marvel Stadium, not Amy Park. That was 46 points to 16. So I'm thinking there could be a little bit of a 40s to 16 sort of scoreline again this weekend. I really hope not, because I would hate to see Parramatta get flogged. So far they have not had 50 points scored against them. Look, they can't win the competition anyway. But the old thing, if you have 50 points scored against you, you put a line through, you can't win the competition, because no team has done it since. No team has won the competition after having 50 points scored against them. Look, if we run through the two sides, Clint Gutherson, captain, fullback, he becomes the 13th player in Parramatta Eels history to play 200 games for the Parramatta Eels. Thank you very much to Rugby League History on Instagram for that stat. He sent me that one through, so thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. Clint Gutherson, 200 games for the Parramatta Eels. He joins an esteemed club. Players like Ray Price, Mick Cronin, Peter Sterling, Brett Kenny, Tim Manor, Fui Moi Moi, obviously Nathan Highmarsh, 330 games for the Eels, Nathan Kalis as well, and there is some more players there are 13 of them apparently as well, so we're trying to work out the whole 13, so I've got most of them there, but I'll get the other ones as well. Jake Tungo on the wing, Blaze Talangi, he moves from number 4 to number 3, Will Penasini swaps sides, he goes into the number 4 jumper. Sean Russell's back in first grade on the wing. Same halves that played against the Gold Coast. Dylan Brown, Dijanasi. The forward pack, a few changes in that one. Sean Lane, Bryce Cartwright into the starting second row. Ryan Madison to lock. Wiramu Greg gets that starting position with Junior Paolo out for the season with that ankle injury. Joey Lussick comes onto the bench in jumper number 14. Joe Offahangawi, Luca Moretti, and Makahesi Makatoa make up the 17. Ethan Sanders, your 18th man. For the Melbourne Storm, look, pretty strong side. I think it's basically the same side that beat the Sydney Roosters 24 points to 8 last weekend down there at Amy Park. As I mentioned before, Joe Chan is out suspended. Ryan Pappenhausen, Will Warbrick, Jack Howarth, Nick Meaney, Grant Anderson, Tyron Wishart, Jerome Hughes, Tui Kamakamitha, Harry Grant is the captain, Josh King, Sean Bloor, Eli Katoa, Trent Liero, Sua Falongo, Christian Welsh, Nelson Asafa Solomona as well, and Lazarus Valupu on the interchange bench. And so, look, a very strong side for the Melbourne Storm. They aren't first on the ladder for nothing. This will be a tough game. No Mitchell Moses, obviously, for the Parramatta Eels. He is out for the season as well with that bicep injury. And look, just the way that Parramatta's season has gone this year, it's going to be really tough for them to get the win. As I mentioned before, I think there could be I think it'll be about 11,000 crowd there. It could be less. Who knows? Parramatta fans are pretty passionate when it comes to their side and the way that they're going this season. Who knows if they'll turn up, but I hope so. Look, the key thing for Parramatta is they need to get off to a good start. They need to score first. The defence on the edges needs to be in check, because otherwise the Melbourne Storm will tear them apart. Jerome Hughes, he's been probably one of the leading players in the NRL this season, and it's why the Melbourne Storm are coming first on the ladder. Harry Grant, we know what he can get up to from dummy half. In that Magic Round game, he did score 2 tries. Look, if the confidence of the Eels gets down, then the Melbourne Storm, they'll just tear them apart and get the win. But it is a chance for these Parramatta Eels players to impress new coach Jason Riles, who is coming into, well, he's basically going to start working straight away. Not with the Eels, but he'll definitely be watching this game because he'll be coaching this side in 2025. So, look, this is a chance for these players to step up and show what they're worth, show what they're made of, and especially at a home game and in front of new coach Jason Riles. So, they can do it. They can. That's what they need to do. They need to stand up, show what they're made of, and give a real good showing of themselves. Not only for themselves, not only for Jason Riles, but the fans and members who are going to travel to this game on Friday night. The ones that are going to watch this game on TV as well. The whole supporting community. They need to stand up against this Melbourne Storm side, because the way that going into this game, all the fans are saying that Parramatta will lose, they'll get smashed. Hopefully they haven't been listening to that, and they do turn up and get the win. But look, it's going to be very, very hard for this side to get the win, especially against this Melbourne Storm side who are just gearing up. They're just playing good footy. They're gearing up for September. They're 4 points clear on the NRL ladder from the Penrith Panthers. They can get this win. They can go 6 points in front if the Panthers don't win on this weekend against the Dragons. But it just gives them more confidence that they will get that minor premiership. They will get that top 4 spot. They will get that double bite at the cherry if needed. In that first week of finals, and they're just continuing to excite people the way they play. Everyone writes them off at the start of the year. They lose another amount of players, and they think, okay, how are they going to go now? But their back row players, Sean Bloor, Eli Katoa, those two have really stood up and through this year as really good surprise packets. Tyrone Wishart, he's been the 5'8" for most of the season. He's used that next man up mentality with Cameron Munster being out. As I mentioned before, Jerome Hughes has been leading this side around, playing great footy as well. And look, someone like Jack Howarth as well, who wasn't the first choice starting centre for the season, he's really stood up as well, and he's cemented his spot in the centre position. So look, I do think that the Melbourne Storm will get this win, in keeping in line with Melbourne will get this win. As much as I hate to say that, because I always want Parramatta to win, I just do not think that they can. With their best player out, Mitchell Moses, it is definitely going to be tougher. I don't think Arcee should have been the halfback. I would have put Ethan Sanders in the halfback role. I said that at the start of the year when Mitchell Moses got injured with his foot, that I would have put Ethan Sanders in straight into halfback. He's a New South Wales Cup halfback. in the old days, you lose your first grade halfback, you just promote your reserve grade halfback straight into first grade. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and look where we are now. Whether he was ready or not at the time, I don't know, but he has had a couple of games through first grade this year. Yes, he is going to Canberra next year, but look, why not just win football games at the end of the year? Why not just try and cause headaches for these top 8 teams and create a bit of a disturbance and nuisance value? So yeah, I would have had Ethan Sanders in at halfback for this game. So I do think that the Melbourne Storm will win. I think it will be 42 points to 18. I think Will Warbrick will be the first try scorer. Look, I think Gutho, he may get a double in this game, in his 200th game. I really hope the boys do stand up for Gutho in his 200th game. You know, he is the heart and soul of this club. Everyone says it all the time. He is 100% committed. He is there trying to make that try-saving tackle. He's trying there to lead around the troops, but we know that Gutho is committed in these games. He wants to win. He wants to win every day of the week. So I hope the boys stand up for him. Hopefully, I'm tipping him maybe a bold prediction. He'll get 2 tries. I'm tipping the crowd figure will be 11,733. That's just a random stat that I've just pulled out. Look, hope I'm completely wrong, but I don't think that Parramatta will win this game. So I will be tipping the Melbourne Storm. Anyway, in my tips this week, I'm going through my daughter Ella's tips anyway, so she tipped the Storm anyway if you listen to the tipping podcast that was released a couple of days ago. So look, there is my game day preview. Now I will be at this game tomorrow night, so if you do see me out and about, please come and say good day. I will be at the Parramatta Leagues Club before, having a bite to eat for dinner. Proud sponsors of the Para Cave podcast. I will be having a Jack's Pale Ale as well. So if you cannot get to the game, you can watch the game at Parramatta Leagues Club. Sterlo's Bar has a massive big TV, I should say, wall-to-wall TV there. So you get in there. I will be there pre-game, and then I will be heading over to Commbank Stadium. So if you see me out and about, come and say good day. We'll chat about how this season has gone. But that's the game day preview for the Parramatta Eels versus the Melbourne Storm. I will have a game day review or a game review of this game coming out over the weekend as well at some time. So stay tuned for that one. And thank you very much for listening. And let me know your thoughts on the game. I'll put a post up saying that this game is out, but just let me know your thoughts on this game as well. See if you can pick a score or a first try scorer, and we'll see whose everyone's thoughts are. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate the support. And look, enjoy your footy over the weekend, and go Para! The Para Cave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Para Cave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave Podcast. See you next time.